I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Edmonton, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event, and the thumbnail always gives it away. Biggest stock riser on this card was the man in the main event, Brandon Moreno. Unanimous decision victory over Amir Albazi. Good bounce back win here for Moreno, of course losing his title, then losing to Brandon Royval. Took some time off, didn't know how he was going to look when we came back. Saw a lot of people talking about, oh, his heart's still in it and all this stuff. This was one of Brandon Moreno's best performances. Really good fight here. Good main event as well. Glad to see the flyweights get a bit of spotlight here. I know the crowd was happy about that one too. Moreno was minus 175 going into this fight, and he completely dominated this fight overall. You could have given Albazi a round maybe, but other than that, this was all Brandon Moreno. Amir Albazi's face pretty banged up here. And this puts Brandon Moreno right back in the driver's seat as far as I'm concerned. You know, Albazi has the win over Kai Kara-France. I know people felt like maybe he didn't win that fight, but on paper, that's still the way it is. So Moreno's now in that mix. There's Royval, there's France, there's, obviously Moreno now enters the fray as well. So, there's going to be a lot of options after that Alexander Pantoja and Kaya Sakura fight. So big win there for Moreno. Main event, 5 rounds, gets it done. Doesn't get much bigger than that on the stock report. Second biggest stock riser on this card has to be Erin Blanchfield. Really good win here over Rose Namajunas. This was close. It was a close fight, but Blanchfield's wrestling ultimately getting her the victory here. And the big thing here is for Erin is that she's still so young, 25 years old, and just took out a former champion in Thug Rose Namajunas. Really good game plan as far as getting the takedowns. Was a little worried early on why Erin was striking, but eventually she switched over to the wrestling. And I thought as the fight went on, Erin's striking looked a lot better in those later rounds and was actually, I think, outlanding Rose a little bit, although I'll have to go check the stats on that one. But yeah, really good win here for Erin. I know the fans weren't super happy with that performance, but that's typical. It's hard to finish Rose Namajunas, right? So I don't necessarily blame Erin for taking this one to the scorecards. But big win there for Erin. And the other thing we got to mention as far as Erin's stock rising, how about that post-fight call out of Alexa Grasso? That is exactly what you need to do. She could have called out Macy Barber. Macy, we know, has got some health issues. That would be a fun fight. I do think they will meet at one point, but why not call out the woman who just lost the title in Alexa Grasso? Love that from Erin Blanchfield. Really good stuff there, and big win for Erin. So she gets my biggest stock riser here. And sticking in the flyweight division, our other big stock riser has to be Jasmine Jasvidius, finishing Ariane Lipski. Wow, great performance here. The thing with Jazz, I know she was favored to go in, but Ariane Lipski, I'm trying to remember the last time she was finished in a fight. It's a while, because Ariane herself was on quite the streak prior to, obviously, Carney Silva lost that fight, but Silva couldn't finish her. Was that her first submission loss? I think so. Yeah. So, first woman to submit Ariane Lipski. Very impressive there. Jasmine, I know she's a little bit older at 35, but, she's making a nice progression up the flyweight division here. This was a good win. I thought this was, I thought going in, I thought the odds should have been actually kind of closer to even, but Jasmine now gets a little bit ahead here, and she's going to climb up the rankings there. Really big win there for Jasmine, who also got the 50K, so that was awesome to see. Jasmine Jasvidius, our third biggest stock riser here on the stock report. And then we'll do a couple honorable mentions. There's a lot of different ways you could have gone here, but I'll go with a few on my end. Ayman Zahabi, I know he was favored in the end. I think earlier in the week, Munoz might have been actually, I'm going to check that right now. But the point is that Albazi is, here's a guy that a couple of years ago had lost to Vince Morales. Didn't really know where he was going. He had that, Zahabi opened as an underdog. So people came in and put money on him. I was high on Zahabi in this fight as well. But yeah, this was a good win. Look, Pedro Munoz, that's sort of the thing, right? If you beat Pedro Munoz, you're probably destined for good things. We've seen time and time again fighters get that victory over Munoz, and Munoz has also stopped a lot of good fighters too, or defeated a lot of good fighters. So yeah, what I was referring to is the 1-2 start to his career, took some time off, and then hasn't lost since. And he beats Javid Bashrat, now he beats Munoz. Zahabi's going to be ranked, but I'm really curious to see how far he can go. Another fighter who's a bit older here at 36, but very good win there over the Punisher, young Punisher, Pedro Munoz. Might want to update that nickname. Since Pedro's not exactly young anymore. Charles Jourdain, got to mention that, first fighter to stop Victor Henry. If you think of how many fights that Henry's had, that's, very, very, very impressive. I think it's his first stoppage loss in however many fights. And Jourdain, I thought, looked good at bantamweight. We'll see how far he can go in this new weight class for him. I think we still forget that Jourdain, still relatively young at 28, so there's lots of room for improvement. He came in the UFC a few years ago. I like the progression he's making. Charles Jourdain, there needs to get an honorable mention here on this card as well. By the way, if you haven't seen it, go check out the interview with OG Shawnee Mack and Charles Jourdain. They kind of look alike. They got tattoos, similar, hairstyle and all that stuff. Go check it out if you have a chance. It was pretty funny. Jourdain interviewing OG Shawnee Mack after the fight. I thought that was good. And last one's Yusuf Zalal. I mean, this guy continues to get submission wins. And you know what? I took the bait from some people who said he'd win a decision here. But look at this. Another finish by submission. I mean, we got to start talking about Yusuf Zalal having one of the best ground games at featherweight. And granted, he's not fighting the greatest opposition, but this was a very big win here. Get Yusuf Zalal a ranked opponent, for God's sake. This is a guy who went the distance with, Ilia Topuria a number of years ago, had a tough first UFC stint. He looks like he's coming into his own. This could be our dark horse for next year, for 2025. I'm going to call it now. Yusuf Zalal progressing very nicely in his career. Really good win for him there, taking out Jack Shore, who only had lost a few fights. Okay, let's get to our stock droppers here on this card. You could have gone a couple different ways with this one, but for me, I went with Nami Yunus over Amir Albazi simply because Albazi was coming off all those, he had the heart surgery and the layoff and all that. Rose, I mean, you had a full camp and you couldn't get it done over Aaron Blanchfield. Now, look, I know Rose was the underdog in this fight, but it's sort of the optics of this. Rose is 32 now, and now she's lost a number of key fights here, right? Like she's obviously lost to Esparza, lost to Fior, lost to Blanchfield. So it's like, where does she go? I always think Rose is better at 115, but it seems like she's dead set on this weight class. I mean, you're losing Aaron Blanchfield, lose to Fior. Granted, those are the two at the top of the food chain. I just wonder, at 32, like how much longer is Rose going to keep fighting? She's already won titles. Is there motivation there? I don't know. I mean, again, it's not like Rose looked bad in this fight, but also this was an opportunity for Rose to redeem herself for that loss against Manon Fior. And, had 2 straight wins going into this one. To me, this was an opportunity for her to break through. So to me, Rose kind of in a tough spot. Like, I know flyweight's a little bit wide open, but you also have fighters that, Grasso gets a win in her next fight. You get Macy Barber getting a win in her next fight. I mean, they could pass Rose at this point. So I think Rose is the biggest stock dropper just because, she's been in the UFC for a while. This is another setback for her. I think optically, Rose is in a really tough spot. So that's why she's my biggest stock dropper. The other one is obviously Amir Albazi. And look, I have some sympathy for Amir. Like I said, huge layoff coming into this fight. Hadn't fought since 2023. Had some surgeries, but it's the fact that this wasn't really competitive. I mean, Albazi did get a round, but I thought the rounds were pretty clear for Moreno for the most part. His face was, banged up here. I really don't know where Amir fits in the division because, if this fight was closer, like if I thought this was a fight where it goes to the scorecards and like, it could go either way, I'd feel more, confident about Albazi being a contender. I don't think we're there yet with him. I think he's got some more work to do. Not really sure what's next for him. I would have said like a Matthias Nicolau, but obviously Nicolau not in the UFC anymore, but someone like that's a veteran that's, kind of on the decline a bit, or someone that he can bounce back against, as I'm reading the rankings a bit wrong here. I wouldn't even mind, honestly, like, where is Albazi? He's here. I mean, I wouldn't even really mind him and Tyra, or even him and Perez, although I think Perez trains a bit. Well, actually, no, I guess Albazi's now at fight ready, so I was going to say trains in Vegas a bit. Or you know what? You do Asu and Albazi. That would be a fun fight too. So, the guy who beat Nicolau. So yeah, Albazi has to be a stock dropper just because, again, I thought Moreno really put it on him in the main event. The other one's got to be Jack Shore. Now, again, Jack was not favored to win this fight, but Jack Shore, there was a point when this guy had a lot of hype. Remember when he was 15-0, and since that 15-0 streak, he's now lost 3 of his last 4. And it's not even just the fact he's losing these fights; it's the fact that he's getting finished. And I mean, the cut on the shin one was a bit weird, but still, like, getting finished by Ricky Simone, who hasn't exactly, been lighting the world on fire at bantamweight since then. It's going to be tough for Shore. He's 29. I suppose he has time to turn this around. It's just the fact that he got finished in this fight, and I think this was an opportunity for him to, at least make this more competitive and move ahead in the rankings. So he was one as well. And then a couple honorable mentions. Got to mention Pedro Munoz. That's back-to-back losses for him. That doesn't happen too often. Actually, sorry, that's 3 straight losses. My bad. So he's lost. I mean, you take the no contest out of the way. I mean, he's lost, 5 of his last 7 fights. That's tough. And again, I think these last 2, especially, if this was a couple years ago, I think Munoz wins these fights. I think the age is starting to show a bit. He's 38, tough to finish. That's why I'm glad I took the over in that one. But yeah, we're kind of at that point with Munoz. It's like, what are you going to do with him? I don't know if the UFC will cut him just because he's fought pretty good opposition. I think it would be smart for them to maybe, kind of do what they tried to do in the Gutierrez fight, which is give him someone that, they can sort of use that fighter to build off of. But we'll see what they decide to do. Would also not shock me if they cut Munoz with the fact that they're bringing in a lot of those Contender Series winners. So yeah, tough loss there for Pedro Munoz. And the other one's got to be Ariane Lipsky. Again, she, had a pretty good win streak prior to Carney Silva. Now that's back-to-back losses for her. She's back to the drawing board. 30 years old, but you're getting finished by Jasmine. I don't know. That's kind of tough to come, to to sort of break through here. So I think Lipsky's another stock dropper on this card. So like I always say on the stock report here, let me know your top 3, bottom 3. Let me know your top 3 stock risers, top 3 stock droppers. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. And then we can debate it. No point in debating my picks. Everyone does that every week. They're like, I don't like this pick, whatever. Give me your 3. It's much easier, or it's much better, I should say, to have a discussion about your top 3 and we can have a discussion about that as opposed to talking about what you don't like about mine. I'm not expecting everyone to like my picks, but I'm curious to see what your criteria is and how you're picking this one. So yeah, we'll go there. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. This is a stock report. I do this after every event. Every week. Hope you guys have a good rest of your what is it, weekend if you're watching this. Sorry, I'm losing track of time here. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Take care.